Hello, and welcome to this week's PennEnergy News Update. On behalf of our generous sponsor, Deloitte Center for Energy Solutions, who made this broadcast possible, I'm Hilton Price. Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation spokesman Levi Ajuanuma was one of the 193 people killed in last week's deadly plane crash in Lagos, Nigeria. The Sunday crash killed all 153 people on board the plane and another 40 in the densely packed neighborhood that bared the brunt of the crash. Eyewitnesses say the Dana Airlines flight struck an electric pole before crashing into a neighborhood building. Several military generals, a group of collegiate officials, and a wedding party were among the passengers on board at the time of the crash. It's being called the worst air disaster in Nigeria in 2 decades. Besides his role with NNPC, Ajuanuma was also the de facto spokesman for the Nigerian oil minister and a sometime radio and TV guest. He joined NNPC in November 2003. He is survived by a wife and several children. Enterprise Products Partners and Enbridge have announced the initial volumes of crude oil through the Seaway pipeline were delivered to the Jones Creek facility near Freeport, Texas. The arrival marks the first southbound delivery of crude by pipeline from the oversupplied Cushing hub and gives producers access to all of the major refineries in the greater Houston area. Since crude oil began flowing through the pipeline, volumes have steadily increased towards the current capacity of 150,000 barrels per day. Work is underway and on schedule to add incremental pumping capacity that would allow the existing Seaway pipeline to transport up to 400,000 barrels per day by the first quarter of 2013. Turkey sharply reduced the amount of crude oil it imports from Iran in May and June, a source at the refinery Tüpraş told Reuters. In March, Tüpraş announced that it would reduce crude oil imports from Iran by 20% in the face of U.S. sanctions. Also in March, the country's energy minister said Turkey's total oil imports from Iran would be cut by 10%. Turkey imports annually 9 million tons of crude oil from Iran. According to the source, Turkey imported more Saudi Arabian oil in May. Greenhouse gas emissions from certain natural gas production activities are up to 86% lower than estimated by the EPA, according to a new study sponsored by America's Natural Gas Alliance and the American Petroleum Institute. Specifically, the study found that methane emissions from natural gas operations such as liquids unloading are 86% lower than EPA estimates. In addition, the study showed that methane emissions from refractured wells are 72% lower than EPA estimates. Overall, the study finds that greenhouse gas emissions from natural gas production are as much as 50% lower than figures used by the EPA. The study's findings are based on an analysis of data from more than 91,000 U.S. natural gas wells operated across diverse geographic areas by more than 20 companies. The expansion of the Motiva Enterprises Texas Gulf Coast oil refinery has finished, making it the largest oil refinery in the country. With the completion of the project, the refinery now boasts a capacity of 600,000 barrels per day, surpassing the 560,000 plus barrels per day from ExxonMobil's refinery in Baytown, Texas. Motiva is a joint project between Aramco and Royal Dutch Shell, and while the refinery largely supplies American consumers, the two companies could begin increasing exports from the facility. Thank you for joining us this week. For these stories and many more, go to PennEnergy.com.